Welcome to Jew or False. I'm your host, Jason A. Kessler, and I am a Zionist. Now, before you act like I just admitted that I eat puppies, let's set the record straight on what the word Zionist actually means. A Zionist is someone who believes that Israel has a right to exist as a safe home for the Jews. It doesn't mean you're anti-Palestinian or that you think anyone should be kicked out of their homes. It doesn't mean you believe in Jewish supremacy, which isn't a thing, or that you think Jewish citizens of Israel should have more rights than non-Jewish citizens. It just means you think Israel has a right to exist, period. Pretty simple. I've always considered myself a Zionist without a second thought. I never imagined it could be controversial, and it really shouldn't be. The overwhelming majority of Americans agree that Israel has a right to exist. But something is changing. People are redefining the word Zionist, turning it into a synonym for racist and evil and anti-Palestinian, which it's not. But the misinformation campaign is working. Now Zionist is a dirty word. It's tainted with a nasty stink worse than a pile of dead skunks and gooey diapers. So who's doing the tainting? The answer is anti-Zionists. An anti-Zionist is someone who doesn't want Israel to exist. Now, hold on. The existence of Israel saved the lives of millions of Jews, including my grandparents, and for some reason anti-Zionists wish that didn't happen? But fine. I know there's competing narratives and a ton of misinformation around the actual creation of Israel, so for now let's just agree to disagree on the pros and cons. Here's the bigger thing. Whether you like it or not, Israel does exist. The debate between Zionism and anti-Zionism is kind of moot. It ended over 70 years ago when Israel became a country. Being an anti-Zionist now is like calling up the restaurant where you ate last night and saying, on second thought, I'll have the lamb. It's like getting so frustrated at your teenage son that you threaten to get a vasectomy because you wish he was never born. It's the world of science fiction and time machines, because Israel already happened. And by now there are millions of Jews in Israel who have never known any other home besides Israel. So, Mr. Anti-Zionist, how can I wrap my head around the fact that you don't want Israel to exist? Make it make sense. It doesn't sound like a realistic way to bring peace to the region, or a practical way to improve life for Palestinians. It honestly kind of sounds genocidal to want to wipe a country off the map. Ah, and there it is. Anti-Zionism doesn't sound very nice, does it? But what if we change the meaning of a few words? If they can convince you that being a Zionist means being racist and evil and anti-Palestinian, then they can make being anti-Zionist sound a little more like being anti-racist. That sounds better, doesn't it? Then it's not about destroying a country, it's about fighting a hateful ideology. It's about being the good guys, which also means they can silence anyone who disagrees, because if you disagree, then you're the bad guy. I mean, why should we listen to that guy? He's a Zionist. The whole thing is deceptive and dangerous. And the net effect is to dehumanize Jews and shun Jewish voices. Look at what happened to Rose Rich, a Jewish undergrad at USC who was vice president of the student government, until she was harassed for being a Zionist. According to Rich, she was accused of being unsuitable as a student leader because her support for Israel supposedly made her complicit in racism. There's also the Minority Rights Council at the University of Virginia, who denied membership to the school's Jewish Leadership Council because the Jewish Council includes a pro-Israel group. Now, the whole reason the Jewish Council decided to join the Minority Rights Council was to band together after the white supremacist rally in Charlottesville. You know, the one where dudes with torches shouted, "Jews will not replace us!" But I guess that wasn't enough to give Jews a seat at the table because, Zionism. Or there's that time the DC chapter of the Sunrise Movement pulled out of a voting rights rally because it included 3 Jewish groups that support Zionism and Israel. Really? You think shunning Zionists is more important than working together on voting rights? That's insane. But it gets worse. That rally that Sunrise DC pulled out of, lots of the other groups involved also support Zionism and Israel because, again, Zionism isn't actually controversial and the vast majority of Americans support Israel's right to exist. But for some strange reason, Sunrise DC only targeted the Jewish groups. How about that? Sadly, I could keep going. There's a Students for Justice in Palestine chapter in Illinois that wanted to exclude Zionist students from social justice activities based on the claim that white supremacy is inherent to pro-Israel advocacy. There's that time Linda Sarsour's organization promoted a rally on Juneteenth that was open to all minus cops and Zionists. There's that speech where the San Francisco director of CARE warned people that Zionist synagogues are your enemies, working to harm you. You get the point. The word Zionist is getting hijacked. And it's not just semantic word games. It's dangerous. And it makes violence against Jews like me more likely. If you can manipulate the meaning of words, you can manipulate the actions of people. Or as Voltaire put it, anyone who can make you believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities. What anti-Zionists are doing is especially absurd because they're making everything topsy-turvy, flipping things around as if they have the moral high ground, when the opposite is true. Just look at it through the lens of peace. If you're a Zionist, you're pro-peace. You want Israel to be a safe home for Jews, and the best way to do that is to build a lasting peace with Israel's neighbors, including the Palestinians. That's why Israel accepted the partition plan in 1947 in the first place, which would have established a Palestinian state alongside Israel. Being Zionist doesn't mean being against Palestinian self-determination. The Zionist dream is for Israelis and Palestinians to live side by side in peace. But what if you're an anti-Zionist? By definition, you're anti-peace. You don't believe in Israel's right to exist? Well, how else do you expect the state of Israel to stop existing except through war? What alternative does Israel have? And if you get your way, what'll happen to all the Jews who currently live in the region? And sorry, but I think being anti-Zionist is also anti-Palestinian, because I don't think fighting for Israel's destruction is the best way to improve the lives of the actual Palestinians living in the region. The best way forward, the only way forward, is for Israelis and Palestinians to respect each other's right to self-determination. They're in the same boat. Their fates are linked. Peace is better for both. War is good for neither. But where Zionism is a dream for peace and prosperity, anti-Zionism is a dream for war and destruction. It's a way to demonize and dehumanize an entire people. And it's a justification to commit acts of violence and hate against people like me. So next time you hear someone act like Zionist is a dirty word, educate them. Next time you hear someone say they're anti-Zionist, call them out for being anti-peace. We can't let them change the definition of words to marginalize us. We can't let them scare us into hiding in the shadows, afraid to be who we are and say what we think. We can't be afraid to call them out when they say that up is down and down is up. I'm Jason A. Kessler, and I am a Zionist.